All right, so I started the recording. Let's get started. I wanted today to talk a little bit about what happened in the past few weeks with, actually in the past month with the Dear GitHub article and what we are doing about it. And at the same time, there was also a new release from GitHub, the GitHub Enterprise 2.5. And Chad asked me how we reply to that, or what basically is the response that we have to that. So I wanted to talk about that today. So I called it today "Making GitLab Great for Everyone," because we want to make GitLab great for the open source community and people with very large projects. And at the same time, we want to make GitLab very great for the enterprise and anyone in large organizations. And those two groups have some problems that overlap, but they also have some distinct problems, and we want to solve them all, which is a very ambitious goal. But I'm pretty confident that we can actually do this. So I just selected a few topics to talk about, and then we have probably ample time to discuss anything else that might come up. So I want to start by talking about what our response was to the Dear GitHub letter. And I'm sure you read the blog post, and if you didn't, you should read the blog post, because this is really important in our industry, and any engineers of our customers, and in general, any engineers in the community will have heard about this at the very least. They might even have contributed to it. So I think it's very important that you read the blog post that they, or read the post that they wrote and our response to it. But more specifically, let's talk about what we are actually doing in response. So one of the main things, maybe I should start by explaining what the problem was. The problem that was raised in the Dear GitHub letter was that for people with very large open source repositories, it's hard to manage all the incoming things. So people create a lot of issues. In GitHub, you can create issues just like in GitLab. People create a lot of issues, and they found that it was hard to manage all these incoming issues and to make sure that everyone respected the way to submit issues, and that they felt that the tools were lacking to be able to handle that kind of incoming traffic. So there were a few other things, but this is the main point. So one of the things they requested was the ability to have templates for issues and merge requests. Basically, that pre-fills the issue or the merge request body with some text, with some markdown text. For instance, the link to any relevant documentation, or maybe the version of the software you are using, something like that. So we've had merge request and issue templates for a while already, I think since GitLab 7.6, and they are available in Enterprise Edition. So this is something we've already had for a long time. And what we saw, this happened yesterday actually, is that GitHub also implemented this as in response to the letter that they wrote. And they used, where in GitLab you currently have to go into the project settings, and you have to fill out the template. They actually used the repository to do this. So we thought this was a good idea. We thought about this before, so we'll be likely adding that very soon. In addition, what we'll be adding in GitLab is the ability to have multiple templates. So rather than just having a single template where it says, if you're submitting an issue and you have some body, you can, for instance, type in bug and then a colon. And what GitLab can do is it can then automatically fill the template based on, for instance, the title that you set. This makes it much more flexible to use templates and much more easy to have these really complex repositories like our own, where you have both bugs coming in, but also feature requests, for instance. And then you can make sure that whether someone is submitting a bug or whether someone is submitting a feature, they use the right kind of template. They make sure that the issue is formatted in the right way for that specific thing. Any questions about this?
I got a quick one, Job. Just curious if our response and our plans is aimed at possibly getting some of these open source projects to move to GitLab, or is there another motive?
The motive is to make a great project, great product. And we believe that if we make a great product, eventually people will come to us. It's not explicitly our idea to pull people away from GitHub. We understand that they are on GitHub because there's a lot of people on GitHub. It's a network effect. And they have a good product. And we have to respect that. So our motive is that they provided feedback, very valuable feedback, and very interesting feedback, and we use that to build a better product.
Thanks, mate. That makes sense.
Right. So another one of the issues that many of these open source maintainers came across was that when there was an issue, for instance, for a feature request or a change to the project, people started to add +1. So you would have this very long list of +1s. We personally experienced this as well at GitLab, which is why we introduced the ability to vote on issues. So you are all aware of this. The inspiration was, of course, Slack, where you can add emoji to messages. So we added this to GitLab 2 releases ago. So you now have the ability to vote on issues and on merge requests using these emojis. So this was already in GitLab. We are extending the functionality as well, whereas previously you could just see the emoji. In GitLab 8.5, you can actually sort by, for instance, how many upvotes an issue has or how many downvotes it has. So you can quickly see what are the more popular things, what are the less popular things. And the problem where you would have this very long list of people writing +1 or thumbs up, that is something we also already solved because we automatically transformed those into emoji. We're thinking about adding voting on comments in the future, which is similar to what Slack does. It's maybe less useful than this. This was really needed, but it's fun. So this is something we're considering for the future as well. Any questions about this?
So GitHub didn't necessarily have that?
No, GitHub explicitly doesn't have this. I expect that they will add it in the coming weeks as well. I agree that this was something that was really needed, and this is really an emergent issue. It's not a long time ago we didn't think that this was something that was really needed, and I think they didn't expect either that this was needed. But once you have large popular open source projects, you just see that this is starting to become necessary. So they don't have this yet. We've had this for a while. Right. So besides those 2 obvious big features that we've already had or are adding or improving to GitLab, there are several other improvements that are especially interesting to people with large open source repositories. I highlighted a few, but there's many more in the pipeline. One of them is confidential issues, which makes it possible that if you have a big open source project and you have a security issue or someone wants to contribute a security issue to your project, they do not necessarily want to share that with the rest of the people. So what we will be adding to GitLab, and GitLab Enterprise Edition specifically, is confidential issues, which are issues that are visible to the members of the project, but not visible for people that are not members of the project. So if your project is open source, you can still have issues that are not visible for the rest of the community. Another one, and this is requested by some customers of ours, is the ability to delete issues. It might sound silly that right now we do not allow this, but there's certain thinking behind that. We will be adding the ability to delete issues and possibly to do a soft delete, meaning it seems like you delete it, but it's still recoverable. And then we've been thinking about these 2 things recently, and these are features that really emerged from having our own large, big, popular open source repository being GitLab. And that is the ability to subscribe to a label. So that means that whenever someone adds a new issue or adds a label to a new issue that you subscribe to, you get a notification of that. So this is particularly interesting to very big repositories where some of the people that are contributing or working on that repository might only be interested in a subset of issues or a subset of things that are labeled in a certain way. For instance, if you have someone that only likes solving bugs or is interested only in bugs and not in feature requests, they could subscribe to the label bug. And then whenever someone submits an issue with the label bug, or when someone adds the label bug to an existing issue, they would get a notification. We are planning to do that in GitLab 8.7, but because we want to use this ourselves intensively as well, I've heard some noises that it might be earlier than that. The other addition that we are really interested in is the ability to subscribe or to new issues. So that means that you get a notification whenever any new issue is created. And this is a really powerful way to monitor a repository. So basically you get in your email, you get all the notifications of all new issues without necessarily everything that follows it. So you have a good idea what is happening in your repository, but you don't necessarily get all the follow-up comments that you might not be interested in. You can simply go in if you are interested, and otherwise you will never get a message from that again. Any questions about this or any of the previous before I move on to the next subject?
Yeah, Job, in terms of the, just going back to the review, +1, -1, is that tallying the number of votes, and can you set the tally somewhere, like like we can have designated approvers, number of approvers? Can you set it so it's like the reviews in this project must have at least 5 upvotes to get the merge button showing, or something like that? Just not 100% sure how that works.
Yeah, that's a great question, Hayden. So what we are talking about here, so let me just go back. Voting on issues is actually voting. So you can add a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and it's tallied up and shown what the total tally is. And this is just to indicate how popular something is, or how many people think this is nice, this is good, that they want to do this. Approving a merge request is something we already have in GitLab Enterprise Edition, and it has that functionality that you're speaking of. So this is a separate feature. It already exists only in Enterprise Edition, and it allows you to set certain approvers, so specific people or a specific amount or a combination even of the two, and then they could simply say, I approve of this or I don't, and only after they all approved it, the merge request can be merged. So yes, that exists. It's a separate thing from this. This is really voting, like voting for something that's popular.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't realize this was voting on issues only. Yeah, thanks for distinguishing the two. My question came from Gerrit, and I know Gerrit has +1, +2, -1, -2 voting mechanism. Do we have something similar with the approvals mechanism in GitLab, or is it slightly different? Because I think it's just named approvers at the moment, and maybe number of approvers.
Yeah, it's just number of approvers. We don't have like that. We don't give you the ability to approve more or less, so to say. So you cannot say I approve it double. No, it's just whoever approves it approves it. There are reasons for that we can discuss, but this is the way we have it now.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Right. So those are the things that I talked about. I think they are especially interesting for people with large open source, maybe open source repositories, or people that like to use the issues extensively and intensively. Some people like us. It's interesting for everyone, but particularly for those people. Now, I also wanted to highlight some of the features, some of the ways that we're improving GitLab. so that it's better for enterprise. So features that are specific to enterprise edition or specific to customers or enterprises that have very large deployments. This also in response to the launch of GitHub Enterprise 2.5. So one of the main things, and I've said this in early talks, is that we are working on making high availability easier. I think this is the main point. Whenever there's a big enterprise release from us or one of our competitors, this has always been a priority and this will always be a priority, that the application can be more easily, or especially that the application can be highly available and that it can be ran in an active passive or an active active setup. And specifically in our case, we're working on making it easier to set it up. So GitLab scales really well. You can very easily have a single instance and have many, many, many thousands of users on that. But if you insist, and there's many reasons to do so, if you insist on having a highly available setup, or if you have like many thousands of users that are very intensively committing, pushing, and pulling to a single instance, it's probably a good idea to have high availability. So we've had this in GitLab for a very long time already in several forms. But what we're doing right now is we're trying to make it much easier to actually set it up. This is an inherently complex thing. So neither us nor our competition has a solution that you can just throw on a server and be done with it. Like installing GitLab on a single server is very easy right now. You cannot do that with high availability. However, we are working on making it much easier. I think that's the first one. This doesn't have a specific timeline. We're making improvements every single release. We try to ship certain things in certain releases that contribute to this, but this is something that is ongoing. Now, I already mentioned this in the team call. With GitLab 8.5, the performance of many, many, many pages has been significantly improved. And with significantly improved, I mean some pages are 10 times faster, if not more, depending on the size of your server. And this is not compared to like GitLab 7. This is compared to GitLab 8.4. So if there's a customer that has a GitLab server that is not running GitLab 8.5 in a few weeks, they should definitely migrate. This is for everyone better. It means that the server is more stable. It means that the load on the server is lower, which makes that it's easier to maintain. But especially for every single person using the instance every single day, it's much more pleasurable to use GitLab. It is much, much faster. And the best part of this is that this is something that will continue over the next few releases. So we worked on this performance monitoring, which we ship with GitLab. So you can actually set up your own performance monitoring. And because we invested time in making this, we'll see that the performance of GitLab will improve over the next coming releases. But I think GitLab 8.5 has been the biggest jump in performance so far. And lastly, I think this is lastly, yeah. Lastly, I saw this was mentioned also in different places, and we mention it usually in our release post as well. And I will discuss this as well when we release 8.5, and I will give my university session about what is specific in 8.5. But we'll be shipping better design for everyone. So I always say that this is an ongoing process, but it's something we should highlight. In the past, GitLab's design was not the best. It was very utilitarian. We had programmers that designed much of the interface. And even though we still do a lot of that, we think a lot more about the design. We have amazing UX people, and we see that the design gets cleaner and cleaner, even though we start adding more and more features and more complex features to GitLab. So specifically in GitLab 8.5, you might have already seen that the issues have now a sidebar that can collapse. And this is one of the many changes. Some are big and some are small that will slowly make it easier and more friendly to use GitLab. And I said this the other day. I spoke with a candidate that was applying at GitLab, and they said that it was very easy to use and much easier to use than some of the competitors' projects. And I think this is a big deal, and I think this is also a way that we can distinguish ourselves by making smart design choices in our interface. And I think this is something that we've been doing and that will make the product look better for everyone. And that's it that I had prepared for today. Are there any questions about any of the previous or anything else?
Actually, Yob, I just have a quick one on the performance improvements. Was there a known degradation in performance for 8.4? I had an email come in from an Australian large customer, and they just deployed 8.4. They've logged an issue already, but they were saying that merge requests are really slow, a few other things. So I'm just wondering if there was some sort of degradation in 8.4 or something that we knew about.
No, and if there was a major degradation, we would have fixed it in a patch, and we would still do that. So if there's a reason that it's much slower, then we will still fix it in a patch. But in general, they should move to 8.5 for seeing improvements. But I expect that they contacted support, right?
Yeah, they have an issue. They just back-channeled with me to say it's really important. They've pushed people to using the command line for merge requests.
Yeah, so we actually added some tools the last release to also improve performance in the repository, housekeeping. So that might help. We can look more into this in the future, and we'll definitely look at their performance, with our new tools.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? It can be about this. It can be about the new release. Yeah, go ahead.
As far as the documentation for HA, you may have mentioned this earlier, but I know that Axel was working on that. Is there a comprehensive HA diagram that's being worked on to put on the website, or anything that just explains exactly how our HA works? Because I know in the past I've had to use a diagram that was not necessarily the best to send to customers, and I hear from customers almost every day about HA.
Okay, so that's a good idea that we make better diagram. As far as I know, it did come by, but I don't know if we're actively working on it. I'm making a note right now that we should have a really good diagram in our documentation.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of people are confusing the or trying to figure out if they need HA or Geo, if that will do. So I was on a call yesterday, and the prospect was wondering, okay, maybe HA is not going to work for me, but the Geo will be a better solution. So anything around including that documentation on how Geo might be the solution for you over HA might be helpful as well.
That's a really good idea. I took a note of that. We should make it clear what the distinguishing features are and why you should use one, the other, or both, which is also possible.
Thanks.
And on that note, do we know which subscription the Geo feature is going to go into? Because it might be good to put that in standard and plus only in that case.
Yeah, I think Chad can talk more about that, but I think we were thinking about doing an add-on. So you would have to pay extra and have a special license for Geo. We're still working on that. So for 8.5, we'll probably do a soft release where the feature is shipped, but you don't have to pay for it yet. We squeezed out the bugs. And then whenever it's completely ready, we can add it and make it an add-on. So you'd have to have a special license for it.
Yeah, we're moving away from the basic standard plus, having one price point, and then all add-ons and GitLab Geo would actually be the first add-on that we'd have would be at an incremental price per user.
Got it.
No other questions?
Yep, I have a question.
Sure.
Which is similar to confidential issues. I got a request from a customer asking for like confidential branches, so like a private branch, and they want to give access only to certain developers. That's something feasible, or does it make sense?
Yeah, I think I saw the request and I commented on it, at least the one that Drew made. I'm open to consider that. So right now we have protected branches. That means that only people with the right permission are able to push that to that branch. And I think the request is to make that more granular. I think we can explore that. I'm not jumping up and down to implement this, but it's definitely something we can explore. At least the extension of protected branches. I don't know if this is if you would call it confidential branches and that a branch would only be visible by certain people. That's definitely not something we would do. You could just create a private repository for that. But the issue, as I saw it coming by, yeah, it's something we can explore. Does that answer your question, Timo?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. As always, if you have any more questions, just throw it in the question channel in Slack. I will be uploading this recording, and I think I forgot to upload the last one to YouTube, and I will update the page and any missing recordings as well. Thank you all for listening, and have a great day.
Thanks, Joe. You too. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Have a good one.